So before you start designing your own book cover, what you don't want to do is just start from like kind of blank slate or a clean canvas. That can be really dangerous for authors. If this is your first ever book cover, it's probably not going to be very good. And that's true for any skill or any hobby or anything that you're learning for the first time. It takes a long time to get good at something. And there's the 1,000-hour rule, which just means it takes about 1,000 hours of practice before you can be competent at any new skill. And book cover design, what you're going to want to do, because you're a creative person and creative people just want to, express themselves, you're going to just want to start with a blank canvas and just put whatever you want, whatever you think is going to be good for your book on the cover. And what's wrong with that, what you're going to end up with is something that you really like because you spent so much time on it, you love it, you think it's great. So it's going to be really hard for you to accept criticism or for you to notice that the cover's not selling very well and switch gears and try something else. So you can make it yourself, but you shouldn't be too tied to your own ideas. You should focus on trying out some options that are going to sell well and not just kind of starting from scratch and doing your own thing. So you want to do some market research before you even start looking for images to use or ideas. You need to get an idea of what kind of book covers are going to sell your book. And to do that, you want to check out the top 10 best-selling books in your genre. And you want to look at fonts and see what kind of fonts they're using. You want to see what kind of colors they're using and also the layout. How do they arrange the text? How do they arrange the pictures? So I'm going to just take a minute and look at some things on Amazon and show you. This is on Amazon. This is the thriller section. I think it's thriller. And really, you want to focus on smaller categories. Thriller is so broad that these books, they're not really all the same category because there's so many different types of thriller. They're a little bit different. But even within these, you can see some similarities. Girl on the Train, All the Light We Cannot See, these two, and this one, they're all really dark, kind of navy or green blue. That's that mysterious, eerie color. They use very simple serif or sans serif fonts with a lot of text, a lot of spacing. They space things out. This is a more traditional thriller, like a spy action thriller where you have somebody running, which is very common for this type. Even on this one, you've got a scene, and then you've got one person in the middle, and Gone Girl is a big scene, and one person in the middle. That's common for covers. It works pretty well. You'll notice, like Gone Girl, and this isn't the original cover, actually. I like the other cover earlier also. But you'll notice, like, the background is there's not a lot of detail. There's not a lot of stuff going on. It's just a nice, background scene. Here's one where you show the face, but that's a little less common. And like Gillian Flynn's covers, there's very little detail at all. It's mostly text. It's just this really nice, spaced out, smaller fonts. But like I said, you really should be looking at a smaller genre. You should be looking at even, like you'd click on one of these and you'd find out what category it's in by going down here. Oops. So these are 3 different categories: literary fiction, psychological, thriller, suspense, crime. So you want to really narrow down what type of book yours is, exactly where it's going to fit in, and you're going to want to look at that category to see what the other ones in that category look like. So this is more the psychological fiction. And a lot of these book covers, it's the same thing. This one, something I'm going to talk a lot about later, is just color contrast, where you normally have teal and yellow or orange because those 2 colors contrast really well. And so instead of having a lot of different colors, you've really just got 2 colors, but they're contrasting colors, so they work really well. This one's a little bit less. The colors don't work as well. I understand why they put the red here because it matches the red of the jacket, and that's an okay idea. But But like this one, it's kind of just too many colors. And there's also a drop shadow behind the text, which I don't like. But really bold fonts, really big fonts. This one's nice, the glow and the colors in the background. The text is laid out really well. But you can kind of just get a look at the kinds of covers you'll find in this category. So when you're thinking about starting to make your cover, you want to probably get something really simple, and even if the background is indistinct or there's like no background or it's just one scene, that's okay. Let's look at another category. This is romance, and it's kind of just, inspirational romance, but I'll go into a smaller category later. So here you usually find a protagonist or two. You'll often find lovers kissing, holding hands. There's a lot of variance with romance, but mostly you'll find kind of a simple picture, like one character or two characters together. The text is done really well on this one. I like this one a lot. Just one really nice picture, very simple text. The other thing about the text is you don't want a heavy drop shadow, so you don't want to put the text somewhere where it's not going to stand out. Let me look for an example. The text is all done pretty well on these covers, but you wouldn't want to put the text somewhere where it doesn't just stand out naturally. Like this text is a little harder to read because it's just put over all these different areas of light and dark, which is why they had to put a drop shadow behind this text to make it stand out. But if you can avoid a drop shadow, even like this one, there's a pretty strong the drop shadow behind the text here, which I don't like. The text isn't done very well. The picture's a little bit boring. But on this one, you've got, you put the text where it fits so that it stands out by putting it somewhere where there's natural contrast between the background and the text. And the same thing, I would really want to go into a smaller subcategory instead of just looking at romance in general. I would want to see what categories this are in. There's a Western, here's historical romance. Let's look at the Western romances. So if this was yours, if you were writing a Western romance, these are the covers you'd want to be looking at to see what your competition is. But you've also got to be a little bit careful just that if you're not really strong on cover design, you don't want to find a bad example. For example, this one is not a great example. It's good enough. It's getting a lot of reviews. That's nice. But I wouldn't choose this one as my model. Just because it's best-selling doesn't mean it has a good cover. And this one's pretty nice. Good text. There's a lot of variance in this too. A lot of, these use really Western fonts. A lot of these don't use Western fonts, which I'm kind of surprised. But you also, it's about the whole cover. So like the covers that have a cowboy with a cowboy hat, you don't really need a Western font to tell you that this is a cowboy cover. And so that you have some options. And you don't need to kind of repeat everything. But like this one, there's nothing here that really represents cowboy. And the fonts aren't really Western. So it's, I guess the boots are pretty Western. But you've got to have something that attracts the right kind of readers who are looking for that Western or that cowboy romance. Same with this one. I don't know why it's in Western romance. And I'll show you one more. This is just a business startup. And in startup or entrepreneurs, this one's actually one of mine, the 7-Day Startup. But you'll notice the lean startup and startup strategy, they've got really simple covers, simple text, sans serif text. This is Babass New. This is probably Steelfish. 0 to 1 is the only one that's got a really big serif font. It's not, this is a great book. It's not one of my favorite covers. But again, if you have a big enough following and audience, the less your cover needs to do any work for you. People will buy his book because he's professional. He's got a big network of people who can help him to promote it. There's a couple more. So you'll see kind of using the similar images and similar text. You don't want your book to look exactly like everybody else's. This one's kind of cool. But it should look like it fits in that category. You'll see a lot of orange in business and startup books. The Lean Analytics, Entrepreneur Mind. So you'll see more, like with nonfiction, you'll see more standardized styles, especially because nonfiction is usually much simpler. It's mostly just about strong text. You don't want to screw up nonfiction by putting something too conceptual. Usually you have some text and then maybe a little bit of an image in the middle that kind of represents your topic. So anyway, this is what you'd want to be doing before you started your book cover design. You'd want to pick some things out that you like, and you want to be careful not to just pick out, a dozen book covers that are totally different, because then you're not going to know what to do. But pick a couple that are pretty similar. Like in this category, I'd probably pick this one because I like this big author name, and I might pick this one because I think the text is done really well. And I might pick this one, even though the text is pretty different. This is a serif font. This really works. So I might take those three covers and then focus on trying to make something that's kind of similar to one or two of those.